We are here at Boroky Studios. Wow. Whoa. Busted.
Stop!
We're not allowed to talk.
No conversation until...
Literally, stop talking to me. Go.
Sorry.
Action.
I don't want to overdose. I don't want you getting too hyped.
Just in case you're wondering, there are aeroplane parts visible from the window. Let's just make that. People have been asking.
I'm gonna clap again.
Synced. Amazing.
We're rolling there too. That's gonna be fun. Welcome to the Boroky podcast. This is my friend Syl.
Hello.
I'm trying to get lots of my artist friends to come and talk to me. That's how I qualify you. You can talk about how you classify yourself if you like. Is there anything else to say before I think not. Here's Syl. Welcome to the Boroky podcast. Please tell us a little bit about yourself if you're willing. Who is this Sylvain character or this Medico Syl character?
Oh yes, Medico Syl.
Yourself.
Look, identity is always a tricky thing to describe succinctly, and it's one of the most common questions you get. Tell me a bit about yourself. But obviously, the self depends on who you're with. I kind of think of the self as a series of character traits that you've observed throughout your life that you enjoyed and adapted to your kind of personality.
That's nice.
And so, the things that I have enjoyed in my life that have contributed to my personality, first and foremost, is our shared history of Ace Ventura. So I'm basically just him. No, look, to give you a simple answer to a complicated question, I live in Sydney. I have just finished studying medicine, which was kind of the big part of the last 7 years of my life, was studying medicine. I've played around in other things like enterprises and student societies, all of which have not really gone to the second step or to a growth stage, but I've started a lot of stuff. So I've learned a lot about starting things. I think in this next phase of my life I'll be focusing on maintaining things. And I've, as you referenced, recently started a YouTube channel. Not even that recently, it's been like 6 to 8 months I think. And that's Medico Syl. It might be renamed to Dr. Syl when I'm a practicing doctor to keep things a bit more clear, because it's being clear and simple is very important in YouTube apparently. And medicine, YouTube, relationships. Another big part of myself is my value of friendships and my relationships. My partner Maddie and all my very close friends. Toby and I have known each other for more than 20 years, probably like 23 years.
Wow.
And we've never done
That's
a podcast.
ridiculous.
Crazy.
Madness.
But yeah, we're very fortunate to have a lot of long-term friendships in our kind of group that we grew up with.
Yeah, it's only been recently I've realised that's actually kind of unusual to know people that
Yeah,
long.
it is very unusual. Maybe that's a consequence of growing up in Canberra.
Yeah.
But and then in terms of my personality, so those are the kind of things that I value and spend time on. But in terms of my personality, I guess I'm a bit extroverted. I like to think about big picture stuff sometimes, but recently I'm realising the importance of focusing on things that are actually impactful. So like thinking
You
about
can measure that, yeah.
yeah, things that make a change in the world, and that probably relate to like my values and living a good life. Because you can spend a whole life thinking about big issues and have no impact on the world. And if I don't know, I guess if you are fortunate enough to have a very good life, you should probably try and use that life to have some positive impact, so other people can have a very good life.
Wow.
So that's the longest answer I've given to that question.
I
hope
love it.
You enjoyed it.
I did. I hope our viewers do too. Yeah, I reckon they will.
Thanks, man.
You sort of maybe something to check in about is like I sort of imagined asking you first about a bit more about your life, about medicine and about YouTubing and your other ventures, and then sort of trying to allow it to dissolve into more like big picture stuff.
Yeah,
but
right.
you kind of already went there, so we could always.
I always see life the other way around. You start
Well,
with
yeah,
the big
exactly,
picture, and then
yeah.
you figure out how you, as a Lego piece in the world, can operate with those set of principles.
Yeah,
I
right.
guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's a hard balance though, because it's good to give people some kind of a picture of your real world. I guess you can hear infinite amounts about someone's philosophy, or I find I can listen to someone talk about their philosophy and be like, this sounds interesting, but I don't trust you until I know a bit more about your whole life.
Right.
And so establishing some kind
Can
of
you
a
walk
picture
the
of
walk,
you.
Mr.
Exactly,
Talky Talk?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in that case, do you mind if I ask you just like one or two other things about?
You can ask me anything. I'm here to be asked.
Yes.
But I get to ask you questions.
Absolutely,
Too.
it's a
Very good.
conversation. Absolutely.
It's a dialogue.
Yes, it should be. Maybe I'll just talk at you for a full hour.
That sounds artistic.
I'll actually like cover
gag
your
me,
mouth and then yeah.
Not again, Toby.
We've tried to do this podcast several times. Every time he ends up in hospital,
yeah.
having to treat himself
As a patient.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've covered my first two questions really, which is who is this Medico Syl character and
Right.
how do we know each other? Childhood friends is a good summary of that. Although we played in a band together, which I think.
Oh, that
cool
has to be discussed.
Yeah.
And I mean, Toby, I don't know how much editing you're going to be doing for this video, but
zero.
Okay,
It's
zero
an
editing.
uncut.
Then go onto YouTube and type in never dash dramatic effect. It's got a healthy 2,000 views, more than any of my views on my YouTube channel. And it is Toby and I in year 10 or something.
Earlier, I think,
Year 9, just going wild in the garage playing this song called Never. One of Toby's brilliant writings of breakups.
And yours. We all wrote. On
Yeah.
those songs,
And
you
I
wrote
think
the drums.
maybe that was the start of my
He's
YouTube
a drummer,
career.
by the way. Did we say that?
Yeah, maybe that was the start of my YouTube career because I did a lot of editing to get my socks into the first scenes. So that's mandatory viewing before watching. But anyway, Toby and I played for years in a band together, and I thought that was like some of the best experiences of my life too.
Wow.
Absolutely, for like because I haven't grown into a musician role in life. Like many of the other band members have actually.
Yeah.
A lot of us, 3 of the 5 are now kind of musically absorbed.
Full time, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And Nathan still plays a lot and I tinker around. But like to just have that exposure to that form of communication and to that world of experience because at the end of the day, look, romanticism is all about having diversity of experiences, right? And that's good and bad and pros and cons and yada, yada, yada. But, like, people go to spend $10,000 to travel to another country.
Yeah.
And that experience of playing in a band was just as valuable to me as a big trip around the world.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I mean, yeah, for me it was
To
definitely-
write and to mess around with time signatures. You guys always catch me on my toes.
Yeah.
Toby does not like 4/4.
I'm coming to love it. I'm learning. I've learned that you can do 4/4 and an infinite number of other time signatures at the same time if you think about it the right way. Something like that. You can fit extra things in 4/4.
The irony of all this is, and after hearing him talk about time signatures in that way, Toby has become a much better drummer than me. And I have to live with that, but that's okay, I can.
We're different drums. I still don't know. Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I often think about that because it's in a way a place where we kind of branched off from each other. It's like we met and we were both musicians. We were both creative musicians. Like I still consider, like, I remember thinking you're a really creative drummer compared to other drummers that were like on the Canberra scene when we were in our teens.
Yeah, that
And
music
I
scene.
was always like really impressed. And it's so interesting seeing someone who is like clearly creative, as in you'd come up with grooves that seemed to be your, maybe you just stole them, I don't know, but they seemed to be very much your own and very much specialized to the music, really appropriate, and they brought a lot of energy to it. They weren't just bringing something that was clearly they were just clearly original, something like that.
Oh, great.
And so I think about that, and you doing that, and then you going on to be a doctor is one of your main things, I think, that's taken up a lot of time, and me going on to do music, and it's so interesting that we're both there, like, being creative in that way, and then kind of adventuring into different walks of life, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something I'm like, Syl is a weird guy, and I think another reason, a great reason to have you on this podcast is I think we're quite different people.
Yeah.
And we're also both like creative people, I think, and that's quite an interesting. I don't know. I will also have plenty of people on this channel who are remarkably similar to me, and so this is quite cool.
Right, I'm breaking your echo chamber.
Yeah, exactly.
Happy to be the antagonist.
Yeah.
By the way, have I ever said music sucks? Did I not bring that up?
Oh wow,
I'm kidding.
I didn't know. I had never realised.
You didn't realise? I thought you realised.
Sorry, I keep turning around to my.
Please
paper.
feel free to have the sheet here if you like. If you don't, I mean, if you like
It
whiplash or
won't
not.
rest. It won't.
It won't
yeah.
sit well.
I could go there, but I also quite like it being out of sight because then we don't have to think about it. You know, I might remove it
As
again.
you wish.
We'll
You place it where you like it.
see.
I want to see these too.
I think we're at.
Where are you at med-wise, and how long did it take?
Yeah.
In terms of med-wise, I'm very wise. No. So I have just completed my 7th year of university and hopefully final for a while.
That's so many years.
I started off with a medical science degree and transitioned into medicine. And then then I did a research year and then 3 years of medicine. It was a very strange pathway. It's not the typical one. But at the end of it all, I finished about a month ago and exams all went well. And so now I start working as a junior doctor in a psychiatry team in mid-January.
Huge.
That's where I'm at. I've done a whole video on my experience of why I went into medicine, and I'm happy to talk a bit about that here as well because it's a big part of my life.
Love to hear a bit.
And
That's the next question, I think. It's like,
yeah. So look,
how did you decide to do med?
I was trying to summarize it into a couple key points on the drive over here. It's the most common question you get asked in an interview, like why choose medicine, and it's the most common question.
You probably get have a great answer because you've refined it.
Yeah, well, sometimes the stereotypes hold, like, it's just so good. So look, there's probably like 3 major reasons and 1 minor reason. First major reason was pathway dependency. My mum did medicine in France, and my sister my eldest sister studied medical sciences. So I had a lot of exposure to medicine as an option, as well as gentle pressure. Just gentle redirection.
Encouragement.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Little nudges.
Yeah.
So that kind of, it was always an option. And I don't know if you remember this, but in like year 7-ish, I was already reading anatomy textbooks to try and memorize bones and stuff.
Yeah, I remember. And
running
it
around
seemed particularly weird back then, or incongruous or something, because I don't think you were getting good marks at school at that point. Like,
No.
you were like a bit of, I don't know, you were exploring, and so you were a little bit rebellious or a little like hard to control.
I was a pretty naughty kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if in conflict is true, but it seemed weird that you also, I would sit down at your house occasionally, we'd watch like someone cutting open a dead body and exploring the insides.
Dr. Gunther von Hagen, yeah. He's the guy.
It was really interesting.
It is, yeah. When you start to realise
I would not have
that,
initiated that.
Yeah, that was a weird thing to bring people over to watch. But you had to realise that you're just a sack of flesh, mate.
Yeah.
So from early age was interested in all that stuff, and then applied a bunch of times. Didn't get in a bunch of times, so I took a year off of uni, went to explore the world and explore myself.
There's a good video you made of like your first application to school.
Yeah, so that was a big.
It had typos.
It had typos. It was incredibly arrogant, and it just sounded like it came from a place of pure naivety. Which a lot of people can get into medicine from a place of naivety, but you need to have some grief in your life to develop as a human.
To be a doctor.
To be a doctor, because you're dealing with grief every day. But I think one big challenge you have in describing what makes a good doctor is like, what is a doctor? And that's a big conversation. So that's the first reason. The second reason is it's actually. People think of medicine as quite challenging and hard, and like academically, it's pretty tough. You got to learn a lot of stuff, but usually it's interesting, which makes it easier because you're learning about yourself in a way and what can go wrong in the body that you're living in. But so that's what's hard about it. But what's easy about it is it's always pretty ethically sound. Like it really stands up well against most easy ethical arguments. So it's kind of a cheat of life. Like I kind of just found that it was cheat. Like
You didn't feel like you had to justify what you were doing.
Well, that was that's the other reason. It's that it's so socially encouraged. Like no one ever says, "Oh, like medicine, huh?"
Yeah.
Like, "Oof, like you must be one of those." Like, it's just positively reinforced all the time.
Yeah.
Doctors are usually seen as heroes. So as I was growing up, it was reinforces that was a good direction in life. But so it actually seemed easy for me to choose medicine. And then like the final big reason is, why wouldn't you? Like everyone always says, like, why would you be a doctor? But like, why wouldn't you be a doctor?
Yeah,
it's such a sweet gig. You're like, ethically it's sweet because you're always trying to reduce suffering at the end of the day, no matter like what field you're in. The whole goal of healthcare is reduction of suffering. And that's
it's hard
that
to
really
say like reduction of suffering isn't good or isn't like
even if it's the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
Like if you go into a couple of layers of depth and you realize that actually they're the worst person in the world for reasons that aren't their fault, therefore them suffering isn't actually like that good a thing. It's like, fuck, yeah.
Yeah. Or you're not going to improve the world, and neither of they are
If they're
neither
suffering.
are they if you let the suffering.
Exactly. So it's actually a pretty easy choice. But the challenging thing is just getting in. That's a very big barrier to medicine. And then the lifestyle. And I've just been incredibly fortunate to have a family that's very supportive and live in a country that has a government that's financially supportive. So like,
and to have like a good enough IQ, for example, to just process all that information. Like there's a huge percentage of the population who just probably doesn't have that.
yeah, maybe like there's probably a percentage of the population that doesn't have it, but I reckon a lot of the population could do it with the support that I've had.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a form of privilege people don't talk about very much.
Yeah.
It's just like there's heaps of people with them. Well, there's 50% of the population with an IQ below 100, and doing a hard degree seems to be hard, I think, without something a little notch above that, I would say.
Yeah, okay. And so that's why I choose medicine.
It's a great
Why not?
Yeah.
Put that argument in your... Yeah, like, I mean, the big arguments against doing medicine would be there's so many people in the world. We're at 7 going to 8 billion. We're probably between those two. And the idea of saving more people, adding numbers to this world is, like, detrimental to Earth's capacity. That's the most common argument. It's actually quite a weak argument.
I think so.
And that's been debunked by this statistician whose name I'm very sorry I forgot because he's recently passed away. So
since we're name dropping, just for the band, because we won't get back to that probably, but Dramatic Effect featured Adam McKay and Alex Coffey and
Nathan Wilson. Yeah.
Just because two of... Are we missing anyone? Yeah.
No, that's the 5 of us.
Two of, like, Coffey and McKay, if I'm using last names, are
if we're
current
soldiers.
musicians who are working, and it's nice to do a shout out.
Yeah, and they're incredible musicians.
Yeah.
They have a big place in my heart.
Yeah, me too.
So the point I was saying was just that people like to argue against medicine because there are too many people in the world. It's a weak argument. People usually make that argument as a joke. But the counter argument...
I definitely have met quite a lot of people, not against medicine exactly, but there are a lot of people making decisions based on overpopulation in a way that seems contestable to me.
Yeah,
maybe I'm going too
the
far.
numbers are pretty clear that as... I guess the term development of countries improves as actually the key term is as female equality improves.
I know.
They
that
decide
makes everyone richer, isn't it? The correct.
Makes everyone richer, but also the fertility rate goes down. So Bangladesh was at, I think it was Bangladesh, but they were at 7 or 8 as a fertility rate. So that's the number of kids per female. And if you think about it, if you can get to 2 kids per female. And a female obviously needs a male to have kids. That means that it's a stable population growth. So we're not in an exponential... If everyone has 7 kids, obviously that's exponential. But if we get to 2 per female, that plateaus. And then you get a stable population.
Which is kind of ideal.
That's the goal.
You don't want a giant drop or...
Literally. And so the point at which that is estimated to happen, if you take into account the development of the world and progress in female rights, that's going to be at around 10 to 11 billion. And so all we have to do is develop Earth's capacity to handle 11 billion people.
Which seems...
ridiculous, but possible. The numbers are unbelievable. But it's possible, especially like with innovations in every single aspect of technology to improve climate impact and stuff.
We're ingenious animals.
We are. We're pretty clever cats.
Monkeys.
Oh, monkeys, yeah. Hominids. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's the most common argument against medicine, but it's pretty weak for that reason. Oh, and the story about Bangladesh was they were averaging 7 offspring, like 7 kids per female, but then a woman-led family planning intervention across the whole country got the fertility rate to like 2.1 in the matter of years. Like, and it's a poor, like, with respect, it's not a very rich country. And they could do it. So it makes me quite optimistic about population growth.
Yeah.
And like family planning is definitely a medical area, so doctors can actually help with that.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's medicine.
It's a great reasons to be a doctor, I think.
Well, a great reasons to study medicine.
Medicine.
Yeah.
You could totally not be a doctor.
Exactly, and there's so many different types of what is a doctor. Not sure if this is where you were expecting this conversation to go, but
I'm loving it. If you're like,
I'm in a good place. Yeah, look, so there's doctors that work in public health who are, impacting the lives of thousands, but a little bit. So they're implementing like school campaigns for exercise, and that doesn't change anyone's life dramatically like a doctor in an emergency department might.
Or not measurably and directly, but it might. Like there's probably a kid somewhere who had that program at that school and was like, if it hadn't been for that program, I would, I don't know, have mad heart disease.
Spot on. And they do measure it actually, and they use the term like quality adjusted life years, which you might have heard about, and it's basically like the number of years that you've added to society that are now good quality that otherwise would have been in a bad quality or disabled.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So if you can keep everyone's BMI like to a healthy level, then that's less diabetes, that's less heart disease, that's less everything bad, and so you're adding more health span in the lifespan, and that adds more quality adjusted life years. So that's the metric that you like to use.
Yeah.
And when you look at like a doctor that works in a hospital full time their whole life, which no doctors do actually. Like it's quite rare for a doctor to just live in a hospital. They usually do research on the side or education and other things. But if someone just purely worked in the hospital, just treating one patient at a time, their number of quality adjusted life years that they add to society is impressively small, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
They do help a few people a lot, but it's just not a scalable model. That's why doctors like to do research, because that's significant. They like to educate, teaching other students, and also get involved in public health campaigns. And that's how you can have some scalability thing. And while I'm ranting,
That's really nice.
one of the big, and this links to YouTube, but one of the big challenges in medicine is the decision between, do I help a few people a lot, or do I help a lot of people a bit? And this is actually in life. And there is no right answer. Hopefully you can hit a balance where you do like some things to help a few people a lot and some things to help a lot of people a bit. I don't think there's an answer where you can help a lot of people a lot unless it's like you do something very significant.
It just gets so tricky in terms of measurement, I think. Like even like this sounds like a good thing, measuring the healthy years of
Callies. So quality adjusted life years.
Callies.
It's a hard measurement to work out.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it sounds great, and it probably is. But it's hard to be sure that by increasing callies, you're not also doing bad stuff that you're just not measuring or something. You know what I mean? Because by changing, especially changing stuff at a social level, you do a lot. You do a lot of change, and that is subtle and hard to actually measure. Yeah, and so I tend to err on the side of skepticism for helping lots of people a bit. Just because I don't understand how it works. I've never seen a system by which it can be administered where I understand every point along the way and can be like, yes, this is definitely a net good.
Yeah.
Which is like it's a dangerous way to think, because you can just be like, well,
no public
point.
Health.
Exactly. Screw it. I don't know it works.
But you're not saying don't do it. You're just saying you as a personal position don't want to have a strong opinion on saying that like exercise in school is a very good idea all the time, because it might cause fat shaming and then negatively affect someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, things are fucking...
Thanks for illustrating
that. Swearing. But things are complicated.
Swear away.
Okay, cool. Yeah, look, things are very complicated.
And so, but on a personal level, it makes me more easily motivated to do things I can see.
And it's always hard to measure everything, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You can't.
One day. I actually do think, I can't imagine how it will work, but I expect science to somehow be able to develop kind of ethical machines that actually work in very, if not actually real, in a very near real way. So you could program in. Sorry, this is a bit.
No,
of a
no,
tangent,
please take
but
this rant.
I was enjoying.
It's good.
Imagining this this morning in my morning pages, but I can see a way that. No, I can't see. I can imagine us just developing our technology and our knowledge well enough that we have some kind of a. I guess you can run ethics tests on, say, you want to introduce a new healthcare policy. You run this test with, I imagine, from my understanding of ethics, you'd have to put in something like a highest value. So you'd write in something like, we value care the most, and care, we can define care, and it might be maybe they'll be able to refine the definition, because, for example, right now, care tends to be giving money to people or giving health to people, like giving health care the way it currently exists, something like that, getting them access to hospitals and doctors, and so that's care. And then, assuming that that's our highest value, we run this policy out in a what's the word? A simulation, I guess, and we come back with results that it's 60% good. Here are all the ways that it's good, here are all the ways that it's bad, and it actually covers, the known universe of ways that things can affect things, something like that. I can't imagine.
Wild.
Step
I love
by
it.
step.
Look,
It'd be
I
a
think
great
you're
topic
talking
for a
about
book.
are you talking about basically like the objectification of everything social?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I almost got slapped for saying that once.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, obviously objective things are better than subjective things. But don't say that to a sociologist. But my point in saying that, and now they can't.
I mean,
almost
better is a strong word. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is, if
Like,
things are objective,
more true might be like, if we define true, you could say.
Yeah.
That. Yeah. Anyway.
I think it's more like if you can measure something,
Sorry,
then impact can be measured. Like, that's a good thing. But there's so much you can't measure in sociology and in social sciences. But my point is,
Or not
if
measure
you could
in a
measure them,
strict way.
that would be better.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, that's
actually,
a
that
great
links
point.
interestingly to creativity in medicine. Which is something I thought we should talk about, because you and Alice in the previous podcast were talking a lot about creativity.
Yeah.
And I realized that medicine is actually, it used to be very creative as a field, but now we're moving towards an area of evidence-based medicine, and that requires the standardization of approaches, so that everything becomes quite algorithmic. Okay, so like blood sugar level, this positive for this blood test, this is diabetic ketoacidosis, you give this drug, this drug, monitor, then this drug. That's a flow sheet that ED and endocrinologists will use, very standardized across the world.
Yeah, I see.
Whereas maybe 200 years ago, that they're not sure what's going on. Maybe
a witch doctor type.
Yeah, this could be a possession. Get some herbs.
Yeah,
200 years ago. Yeah, 2,000 years ago maybe. Let's.
But
do some
even
burr holes,
200,
let's get some
yeah,
bleeding.
exactly. You don't know that everything works.
It's quite creative to bleed things, get all those humours.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now it's actually going away from creativity, which is got pros and cons. The benefits are that it's undeniably better for most people, a significant amount of people, to have things standardized, because then you can get evidence bases and then you know what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of the stuff that we have done previously doesn't work. And that's obviously unethical, to go to a place of healing and become more sick as a result of negligence, because they haven't done the right thing.
Yeah.
And we know what the right thing to do is now, a lot of the time in medicine. But it also means that doctors aren't encouraged to be creative during their medical degrees. There's no creative writing. I guess that's not that important in like the clinical field. But yeah, creativity isn't that fostered. But I think what I'm realizing is that since everyone's so different, so yes, in the management of acute diabetic ketoacidosis, which is what I was referencing before with that algorithmic approach, which is standardized and basic and not creative. But in people's like chronic health, everyone's so different that you do have to have creativity in how you approach them as a person and give them a medication regime that works for them. And I've just finished the Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
Oh yeah.
Have you read that one?
Sachs,
yeah.
I haven't, but.
Oh, so he talks about a bunch of like wacky and wild case studies. And he's very creative because I guess he's not dealing with the standard algorithmic patients that will just respond to the normal algorithm. But there was a story of a drummer, and like Wacky Tacky Ray or Ricky Ticky Ray or something was his name,
right.
and he had Tourette's syndrome. And you've probably heard or seen Tourette's syndrome. It's people who develop facial grimaces, or they get this impulse they needed to move, and often they will swear profanities obscenely and like without any conscious control. It is not like they're choosing to say what they're saying. And it might be personal, like they might just swear at your t-shirt, but that's not like an attack on you. It's just this kind of intrusive requirement that they have to fulfill. Anyway, he was a jazz drummer, and his Tourette's made him a very good improviser. And so when he went to see Oliver Sacks, he started on antipsychotic, which chilled him right down. Antipsychotics bring down the dopamine levels, which is high dopamine is like schizophrenia and mania, and it's very excited states, but antipsychotics bring that right down. So he was chilled, and he was becoming a very good life liver. Like he had good relationships with his wife finally, and his family was all stable, his job was going well, but he couldn't play drums anymore.
What a trade-off.
With like what a trade-off. What do you want? But anyway, like Oliver Sacks being the legend he is, just came up with a simple solution, which was just to not take the antipsychotics on like gig night. And so he would still have enough dopamine to come up with some interesting gigs.
Wow.
Yeah. Like that requires like compassion, care. Because I mean, you hear about these stories a lot, like, oh, the side effect's doing this, and the most common thing you see from a doctor is, oh, that sucks, I'm really sorry, but that's just the best thing for you, because not taking this medicine you'll die earlier. They don't say it like that, by the way. But the point is like, you have to suffer with the side effects because the consequences are worse than this side effect. So there is some room for creativity, but it is kind of being a bit bred out of medicine, and it's a complicated thing.
I guess, maybe it's just, maybe while medicine becomes a category, like if you're a medical practitioner of some sort, in that capacity, you maybe have less capacity for creativity, or although they do say that I've forgotten the exact words, but something like constraint is the mother of creativity. You know, like within those constraints, as you're just describing, you can become creative. And I definitely have that kind of experience with teaching music. It's like basically I teach out of like the same exercises in the same book a lot of the time. Like I rarely stray heaps. I do. I try and but within our actual interactions and our approaches to each exercise, etc., I vary wildly, and so I find music tuition to be creatively very fulfilling. It's
really,
not,
that's
it
great.
Couldn't be my only thing. I need to have other kinds of more like, my personal thing is like generative creativity is what feels the best. Having a blank page to start with and making something. You know what I mean? That's what makes me feel the best.
But that sounds really hard because that's not giving you constraint. I mean, you have the constraint
I'm
of an
pretty
A4
weird.
blank piece of paper, but most people find that extremely intimidating.
Yeah, maybe there are ways around that, and I love. In every conversation with everyone, I seem to refer to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is my Bible.
Is this new, or have you read it? Just as a reference, look at that. That is a well-read book.
That's how it comes.
How many times have you read this book, Toby?
It's hard to say because I often open it at particular bits, but 10 times or so through.
It's often referenced.
I
haven't read it.
It's a good read, and it's even better to do if you can put away, I think, like half an hour a day or something. It's like an exercise book. So for 12 weeks it's a bit more than half an hour actually, because you do morning pages.
12 weeks, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's significant, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Half an hour or an hour?
Yeah. Maybe call it 45 minutes all up, something like that. It's basically writing freehand. 3 pages every morning is one of the exercises that you have to do all 12 weeks, and the other is a weekly artist date, where you take yourself on a date and spend time with it's spending time with your inner child. So it's like going on a date with a kid if you had a kid.
That. What's your call on typing your morning pages?
Well, she says no.
Yeah.
The author says no. But I mean, I bet it's better than not doing morning pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about the purposefulness of and the slowing
maybe
down.
you know, like research has been done on.
How do you even research that?
Exactly. Yeah. Like there seems to be a difference.
Billionaires write it.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that. Yeah.
Yeah, because money's a good measure of this.
I like the tactile sense and the fact that
Right.
I can draw or I can scribble like a name out that I'm really angry at. Because the whole point is it's like taking the trash out. You don't want to censor. You want to write as quickly as you can and just let.
Well, that's why typing feels more disinhibited.
Well, exactly.
Because you go quicker. Yeah. But maybe
Try
there's some level. Yeah, I'll experiment. It's on my to-do list of life.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was my point about that? Oh, just that, creativity comes in many guises. And this is so good for helping people do that, I think. To discover the ways that you can be creative with your life that you might be afraid of doing or whatever it may be, but which actually might bring richness and benefit to the world.
Who's the author?
Julia Cameron.
So Julia, Toby's not sponsored on this channel, sorry, Boroky, but if you want to sponsor Boroky,
it'll pay off.
He's your biggest fan.
Yeah.
No shame. I think it deserves a place in the background. Is this dried?
Yeah, it's all dried. It's a bit of a clash, but I like clash. So
well, you got some thematic similarities.
Yeah, we got some maroon. Or
actually, if I borrowed this, I could take it in my bag.
Oh, where's your bag gone? Did I remove it? I might have stolen it.
So this is just a shameless plug, guys. Boroky actually has merch, which the link will be in the description below. But this is larger than average, and it's a great way to support local Sydney artists. It's a luxury bag. It's Boroky.
A little bigger than usual.
He wears shirts that are too big, but this fella wears hats that are too big.
It's a great ad for Boroky. Thanks, Syl.
Yoink. Now I get a free bag and a free book.
Yeah, and if you come on the podcast, you will too. Sponsored by Julia Cameron.
Intermission. No. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, at some point I will.
Also, I would like to make a point that Toby and I, since we've known each other for more than 2 decades, we've had many conversations. But I feel like this conversation, we've been the best at not being overly tangential, which will surprise a lot of people because we've been super tangential. But our normal conversations will start here and then end, and we're in Sydney right now, but we'll end around maybe France. That's how far we'll go off. And we'll never sort out this little index finger.
It's a good focused chat. I'm really liking
we keep going back to the point and I go, oh yeah, we were talking about that. So that's been very satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I could ask you about your YouTube channel, because we haven't... The next question we haven't quite covered is what got you interested in psychiatry, so maybe you could do that.
Yeah. Well, I can. Look, it's very difficult question what to spend your life on. And you could always change later. You usually do. You start somewhere. Look, mental health as a field is extremely exciting for a series of reasons. First of all, it's a huge issue, and people are now starting to realize it, which means that in the next 50 years, we're going to see some exciting developments. Primarily because we just don't have a bloody clue what's going on a lot of the time. Like, it is the only field in medicine where we are diagnosing based on the symptoms you experience rather than understanding the cause of the disease. And you need to have a good understanding of causes of disease to treat them effectively. So in a heart attack, we know what causes a heart attack. You have high cholesterol in your blood. It causes a plaque on an artery in the heart that constricts blood flow, which means that you get a dead tissue, and that's the heart attack, dead tissue in the heart. And so it doesn't contract, and you get all the problems associated with that, and the chest pain. And the chest pain is just a symptom, right? You cannot diagnose a heart attack based on chest pain. You need to do investigations like an ECG and a blood level for the thing of the heart. And you do like things that tell you that it's a heart attack. And then you can do imaging of the heart and see, oh, there's the vessel that's blocked. You can see that it's not filling in the imaging. We have nothing like that in the brain. There's no blood test for depression. There's no kind of... We have EEGs, but they're pretty messy. They're not that clean. And essentially the whole reason we don't have any of this is because the brain is the most complicated biological structure probably in the universe. And it's the last big biological frontier. That's controversial. There's genetic things as well that are very hard. But we have a pretty good understanding of the, 4 nucleosides or tides in the genome, but we have like, yeah, just a neuron in itself is a pretty incredibly complex structure. So anyway, the field has a pretty exciting next 50 years. It's a field that I'm happy to spend my time interested in. It's not a field that I necessarily feel like I have the perfect temperament and personality for, because traditionally psychiatrists have been classed as these sit back, introverted, quiet speaking talkers. Yes, tell me more. Whereas I'm more of a like energetic, extroverted, maybe not patient enough personality, and that is something I'm very happy to work on as a trade-off.
Yeah.
There is no perfect
also,
job for anyone, right?
Well, exactly, and presumably some diversity in a field. If lots of people who are the stereotype you described are applying and going into psychiatry, maybe you need people who are a bit more bubbly and forward and will like tell you their reactions in real time or something, for the people who are really uncomfortable with someone who's like this quiet observer or something. Yeah. So maybe it'll turn out you're perfect for the right kind of patients.
The second thing is you want to work in a field that needs you. You don't want to, like, I think, and psychiatry is deficient.
If you don't feel needed, then you're going to feel the opposite a little bit. You'll get
and if you want to have the most amount of positive impact, you want to work on an important problem that doesn't have that much resources. So climate change is a very important problem, but surprisingly has heaps of resources compared to other threats to humanity. So, for example, this was written in a book before COVID, but major threats to humanity were pandemics with pathogens from pathogens like COVID, and the and there's heaps of TED Talks about what COVID was going to be before COVID happened, and we were incredibly lucky to have such a benign pathogen, which COVID is, compared to what could have been. There are pathogens out there that could cause pandemics with mortality rates in the like orders of magnitude higher than COVID, that would destabilize the world easily, but we're surviving. So like. Anyway, we need more resources and things like that. Also, relationships between China and other countries. Those relationships are incredibly important, but there's not many resources invested into those relationships. You need those resources. So yes, work on climate change is a very important problem, but also there's other global problems that don't have as much resources. And one of them is mental health. Is it a existential problem? Not yet. But it's existential in the fact that you need a motivated society to have optimistic future, and that's something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that very short answer. There's much more to say about why I like psychiatry.
It didn't feel short to me.
I was being sarcastic.
I actually
you're like, can you shortly?
Oh, sorry. I meant it didn't feel long, is what I meant to reassure you of. To me, rants like that are like. I feel like if I watched them on a YouTube channel, they'd be the good stuff. Like they feel like Medico Syl coming to life a little bit, you know, like really seeing an argument unfold in real time or something. See you thinking. Like that's what I love to watch.
If you want some, Look, just to summarise, recent Productivity Commission on Mental Health showed that it's costing the Australian economy $200 billion a year in like a bunch of different.
Yeah, I remember hearing that on the radio actually. Yeah.
So that's a huge amount of money, and for like a couple billion, you can reduce that significantly. Some of it you can't reduce with just more money, but some of it you can. So people give a shit, and the government gives a shit. So now it's political interest, which is very significant.
Yeah.
Mental health. I could go on about that for a while, but I think that's a healthy amount for this forum.
That was really good. Well, yeah, do you want to talk in that case about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, look, medicine's... Yeah, so I chose to go into YouTube because we were spending more time inside during COVID, and I thought as opposed to absorbing so much, I should start producing so much. I'm just going to take a short break here to make sure my camera is still recording.
Yeah, me too.
I just realised.
I'll just check how long we've been going. Do you remember what time we started? How long's it been off? Has it run out?
I don't know. I don't know if it even started.
Imagine that. Well, we've done very well audio-wise, so we've got an audio podcast.
So
no, that's all right.
It might be something that people have to.
I can, for example, take a photo of us and then post the audio on YouTube. It's not a huge deal. But I suspect you started it.
I thought I started too, but hasn't. But what
would it just automatically stop when it runs out of memory?
Well, we'll figure it out later anyway. We know that right now it's not recording, and after we finish our dialogue, we can
sort
work
it out. Sorry, I'm so sorry that happened.
That is very likely my fault, so the apologies are from me. I do not know how to pay you back on that screw up, so...
Have me over for a Medico Syl podcast. Or just come for another one. Like, it's been a fun chat, and I've still got the
guts of it, yeah.
Exactly.
Audio.
Yeah.
Which podcasts, by the way, are meant to be audio.
Exactly.
So
and I told Syl he was coming for a podcast.
Exactly. So now we got the video. Now we've got the HD.
Is it gone now?
I'm going to triple check this time because that was, gosh. I haven't done that one before, but I'm sure it's like something everyone does once.
Yeah, totally. I've
just done a full video and not. Let's just get that like that. Incented. All right, so now we're here in video format. So the question was,
how'd your YouTube?
So why YouTube? Okay. Well, I wanted to learn how to remember to turn bloody cameras on as well. Starting point. No, I chose YouTube because I could foresee. So it was COVID. I wanted to be productive rather than just absorbing like a sponge. I wanted to excrete what I was absorbing. As weird as that sounded. So I was watching a lot of YouTube. So I thought, well, instead of watching it, I'll just start producing it. And Ali Abdaal's. I was getting into Ali Abdaal. He's quite motivational, and I went to his oldest video to see like how do you even start, and it was just him with his phone being like, I'm just going to start now. You just have to start. It doesn't really matter. Everyone's going to think this is crap. That's fine with me. And I was like, that's fine with me. I don't care. No one's going to watch this.
Yeah.
And no one does. I've got 300 subscribers. I average 50 views a video. That's fine because right now I'm in an explorative state.
That's a success, or it's
sure
better than mine is going, for example.
Well, yeah, but these things I don't think you should even care that much about numbers in the early days.
And it's got to be, well, for me at least, I haven't even been making videos the way you I haven't really edited anything. I'm just putting up things like me playing a song or
raw
me having a conversation. Yeah, and it's still extremely fulfilling and interesting, even doing, for example, a podcast.
Exactly. So YouTube is very good. I'm a big fan of YouTube. I think the reason that I wanted to now want to do it after trialing it for a couple months, I tried with the medical student vlog-esque type of channel, which I enjoy, but I'm now moving towards more mental health channel because in 6 to 7 years if I become a psychiatrist, when I become, whatever specialty it is that I end up in, it's good to have a modality of sharing information that's scalable. Yeah. Because when you are a doctor, you're helping one at a time, a lot of the time. And YouTube lets you scale to thousands.
Which is huge, because often a teacher is a life-changing stimulus for people. I know a lot of people who say this one teacher they took a little extra care with me, and it made me interested in, I don't know, history.
This links to what we were saying before. You're right.
Yeah.
You want to help a few people a lot, and a lot of people a bit. And if you can find the balance, YouTube's a good balancer of that equation. It's do your work and then do your YouTube on the side to get to the scale. And
I would say plenty of YouTubers have changed my life in some small but substantial way.
Yeah, my parents did not grow up with YouTube. They didn't grow up with democratized information at their fingertips.
In fact, I'd say you were the first person I knew making really obvious use of YouTube, because you were learning magic and poker and stuff off it in early high school.
I was learning how to rip and how to do shuffles to rig the deck so I could make money off it.
Exactly.
I still owe you, by the way. No, I was always ethical during the money games. We used to play poker for $5 buy-ins. Big money.
At the time it was. That was I had $10 for mowing the lawn, and then I couldn't get money until the lawn grew back. So,
Those games were amazing. No one wanted to lose their money, so we never doubled the blinds, which meant the games would go till 7 in the morning. And so essentially you'd lose when you're tired because you'd just give up. And I was always very tired, so I'd often lose. Anyway, we learned how to play poker. So that's a bit about the YouTube channel. Yeah, I think developing a community around mental health awareness, education, and other professionals and patients will be a really interesting part of my life in the future. So I'm doing it now so that in the future it becomes something interesting. Yeah.
That sounds smart. I feel like I wrote too many questions.
How are we going on time? What are we at?
I feel like we've done about an hour, maybe 55 minutes, something like that.
It's 11:15. No, it's not. That time is wrong. Is that time right?
I think that time's right, yeah. Maybe we've done more than an hour.
Oh, I said 11:30. You're right. No, that is.
You were going to leave, 11:30.
Sorry, I thought it was 12:30.
Get out of the room.
All right, one last question then, hey?
Well, it's quite a big one. If I'm gonna.
Sounds like a good closer then.
But it's almost where we started when you gave an introduction to yourself. I wanted to ask, what is your highest moral principle? And then I wrote down a few examples to prompt you if you didn't have like a single word or something.
Look, I would
truth and love and care and freedom and depending on what you pick, I find the world looks quite different. You know, different things light up, and so it's quite a cool question to ask.
I'm not sure about.
You don't have to pick only one.
Exactly. I wouldn't. I would pull a CEO move and be not hierarchize moral principles.
Yeah, good.
The easiest answer for me is love. A lot of things come back to love for me, which is a little bit cringy, but
it was good enough for like Christ, you know. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so a lot of things come back to that. Look, what makes a good life? I think maybe 4 or 5 things. First, having meaningful relationships, so sharing your life with important people that are important to you, that you have history with, that you have camaraderie with, that you've developed with. We have a lot of those things. We have camaraderie through music. We developed together as humans. We share a lot of stories, and we also have shared values, but explore them in different worlds. So we have a really deep relationship. So deep relationships and partners. Partner. Sorry, Maddie. She's not going to watch till an hour. Second thing, you want to get outside a bit. You want to see the blue. You want to see the green. You want to go outside, get a bit of fresh air. You don't want to spend your life. These are my values that I've adapted, but I don't want to spend my life just locked in away or like hidden from the external world. So going for a hike, I find that is part of a fulfilling life. Meaningful work. You want to find a work that feels like it's not work, that it feels like it's play. And if it's important and it's interesting, then that's the 2 really important criteria, I think, which we talked about. Those are 3 pretty good things. Are we happy with them?
Lovely, Holy Trinity.
Yeah, the Holy Trinity. I think having a laugh too. I just really like laughing.
That's like that's something that can infuse all of them and allow you to update, something like that. You know.
I think my operating principle is optimistic nihilism. So
this is where we differ a lot.
That's right. And so this will be for the next podcast then.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because this is too juicy to end on a cliffhanger. Actually, it's a good cliffhanger. So my views on the world are like I'm an optimistic nihilist, but the thing that kind of keeps me going, because I don't have any kind of religious motivations to be a good person. It's much more of a social and relationship-based motivation to be a good person in the world, which I think is a very good way to live. And love has replaced what God does for so many. So, God, you wouldn't want to sin because that would upset your God, but I wouldn't want to sin because that would jeopardize the depth of love I have with my friends and partner. And I guess that just links to me being quite a social creature. That was the quickest way I could summarize a lot of thoughts around operating moral principles.
I think that was great, to be honest, and it made me realize, at least that it seems that our difference might be more towards to do with terms and categories rather than the way we approach life, which is quite interesting because often I find a conflict can be traced back to 2 people having different values in that argument. So one person values care, one values freedom, so they often get messed up, get into conflict. And on this occasion, I think we might actually value similar things and just call them different things. Because I'm just like, nihilism is a no-no. I can't say nothing means anything, which seems to be a phrase that goes with nihilism, something like that.
Yeah.
That meaning, like life is meaningless, things like that. I can't do that. But I feel like I live a very similar way for very similar reasons, you know.
Well, I mean, let's get cracking.
Are you sure? Yeah, we'll get you out.
This
of
is
the
more.
door.
No, don't worry about my time. But this is more for us.
Okay, cool.
People want to keep watching it. Yeah. So I think I can get away with saying inherently, like intrinsic value of life is there's none. There's no intrinsic meaning between any of my cells as a body of being. But I have this ability to prescribe meaning. I have this experience that can be good or bad. And like for me, that's meaningful for my personal truth. But at an objective level, from an outsider looking at the earth, like I'm an ant on the surface, and you know I don't have a purpose. There's no kind of, these are all just me ranting what my psyche believes. I'm quite deterministic. Like if you just look at how neurons behave, they're either stimulated by other neurons or inhibited by other neurons. But no matter how they trigger as a result of ions going across a membrane, which is a consequence of like factors that aren't free will. Like they're a consequence of the environment or like that's either external or internal, but they're a consequence. They're a consequence.
Yeah.
So that is determinism, and so everything that's ever happened always was going to happen since the Big Bang. But it feels like we have free will, so that's great. Let's act like we have free will. If someone does something bad, you know, you shouldn't be punished at a personal level, but you need to be removed from society if you're dangerous to society, because you're always going to do that.
Yeah, but I think it does get hard. Is this an appropriate time to finish?
No, that's probably the depth of. And I'd love to change my mind on that, so please do.
I guess so. I don't know if I can change your mind because I'm basically willing to concede all objective claims about objective truth, kind of thing. Like, yes, this is the way that the material of our existence is put together, the material stuff. But I feel like at least to most people, the material world is a tiny little section of their actual life, of what means something, of what matters. Matter not mattering that much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is funny. Because I think we and then we get into like the kind of it's quite confusing what truth and what real might mean, considering that I at least operate in an environment that is mainly people, not things. Like they matter to me, and I'm adapted to them as an organism. I would say our environment has been made out of people for as long as there have been people, and that's long enough for some adaptive things. But as long as there have been creatures that are social, which is even longer kind of thing, we're adapted to all that. And so, what am I saying?
Bringing it.
I guess maybe just one more thing, because I'm being scatty about it. Is I think there's a strong, if not truth, then just significance to ideas that produce healthy behavior. And so if it is true that more often than not, believing that nothing matters produces worse behavior, in my opinion, that I think this might be the case, I can't prove it, than believing that everything matters, say, that every single decision you ever make is a choice, even if it's not, or at least is important, that you still have to make those choices, and you seem to, even if you are always going to, that it doesn't, the material truth of the matter doesn't seem to matter because or it doesn't seem to necessarily produce the best results for the future. So it's all based on a presumption that that free will exists. It's very hard to get around that, but I've had healthy periods of my life, and they have involved a strong belief in free will and a strong sense of discipline and all sorts of things, and I've had unhealthy periods of my life which have been characterized with a sense that nothing matters and this was always going to happen, etc. And so it's definitely a personal thing. I can't really get objective about it, but lots of people, it's not a,
No, look, that's a very unfortunate truth that I agree with, that when you have the viewpoint that I have, especially if you've had a non-privileged life, it becomes very hard to...
Well, that's actually something I heard recently is... to be an atheist is a privilege, something like that.
Absolutely.
Like when you're harder done by it, to deal with suffering,
to have no
religion
reason for your
or something
suffering,
like it,
exactly.
It seems to be an amazing.
Which sucks. I wish
help.
there was like the goodness of religion in atheism. And Alain de Botton is the best.
Atheism.
He's the biggest atheist priest that we have. Because he talks a lot about how to live without religion, but use religious values in kind of atheistic sense. And I'm very pro-religion. Like I'm an atheist in the sense that I don't believe in a god, but
I think that maybe I don't either.
But
I believe
and if there is a god, like I don't think. I mean, if he hates me for my atheistic beliefs, then he's not particularly a god that I wanted to believe in.
Whereas, I'd say God is the personified world, anthropomorphized world. You treat your entire environment as if it were a person that could be bargained with, and that's God.
Right.
But
anyway, to go back to your point, yes, believing in nihilism makes things, usually people have worse outcomes in all things, usually. But
nihilism, it seems to characterize depression.
But it doesn't necessarily...
The killers, for example, I don't know if it's...
but it doesn't influence whether it's right or wrong, unfortunately. And we definitely have a sensation of free will. It could be like an illusion. And so I think you should act as if you had free will. Even though it's slightly lying to yourself.
Which seems like a contradiction. Yeah, it seems strange. I feel like there's a problem there that's waiting to be resolved adequately. I haven't heard many yet.
Yeah, me too. I'd love, but that's the only kind. Like you could act like you don't have free will, but what would change? I'm not sure. I act as if I have free will because that's the easiest, because that's how it feels.
One more thing is that science is incomplete. That even material studies don't cover that much of the world. We just don't even know how much that we don't cover. Does that make sense?
And I'm not like an absolute... I'm not totally convinced by my position.
The evidence might come out that actually...
that'd be great.
Well, especially, there's one... I think a lot of my thinking is founded on the idea that nothing actually exists without people. I'm very people-centered, like without something, a conscious observer. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Look, I like it. But I don't think there's anything to suggest that there is free will scientifically. And I think there's a lot to suggest we don't have free will scientifically. There's enough, just basic mechanics. And when people argue, the common counter-argument is around quantum mechanics and the randomness that is involved in, because randomness can't be deterministic, but it can.
Sometimes perception affects the behavior of particles as well.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if a human's will is going to be influenced by positions of electrons. But I don't know enough to be so sure about that.
Different planes of discussion.
So it's always interesting to listen to people who know about quantum mechanics talk about consciousness. And we probably need more about that. But I just don't think that that's the catch. I don't think that was the answer people wanted. It's not because quantum mechanics are random that there's free will.
No.
Anyway, and you're right. People who believe in God or have an external locus of meaning do well in rehabilitation, like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff. And I wish there was enough. I don't know how to provide that from an atheistic perspective. Maybe something I'll think about. Dude, this has been very nice.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting to the free will stuff. I like
I think we need a second one to go a bit deeper because I'm feeling a bit rushed, but that's another cup of tea.
Yes. Let's go eat a mango if you got time.
We do.
Cool. Bye everyone. Thanks for watching Medico Syl or Sylvain Meslin on the Boroky channel.
Have a wonderful afternoon. And buy a bag.
Yeah, buy a bag. Thanks so much for coming on, Syl.